well-known Mr. Mark Lewisohn. And a beautiful man, too. Beautiful. You okay, Mark?
Thank you very much, yeah.
Now, normally I'd do a big introduction for the guest, but this guy talks so much that I'm just going to bring him on. He's an absolute legend. We've never had him at Beatleweek, so we're absolutely delighted to have him. It's Mr. Judd Lander, everybody.
Thanks, Judd. Take a seat. Take a seat.
How are you feeling this morning?
How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, everyone's got a hangover, I think.
Right, so there was my introduction. That's gone. I was going to say a sprightly man who was a part of the Liverpool beat scene in the 60s and is still only 24. That's you, isn't it?
Yeah, sums me up perfectly.
Yeah. So he's a man of many talents with a lifetime in the music industry, starts here in Liverpool and then goes down to London. And there might be something later that you're going to recognize as well, musically, I mean. But let's begin in the 60s. The Hideaways. You were in a band called the Hideaways here in Liverpool, right? Is that correct?
That's right, that was the first band. And we used to drive past this hotel on the way on a bus, on the top of the bus, and we'd go to rehearse in Williamson Square, and I'd look at this place and I'd say, one day I'm going to stay here. And eventually I did with one of my artists, a guy called, I'm going back now, the one and only Chesney Hawkes, who's a young kid.
Oh, yeah.
Had a big #1, and I booked the hotel. Now, the hotel's nice now, but then it was very strange. It was like a weird place, the weird mistake I'd ever made. But now it's beautiful and it's regenerated. So there you go. I eventually got to stay here.
You've made it in. How big did the Hideaways become as big as you hoped that they would, or what ambition did you have?
We missed so many opportunities. The Beatles had gone. Frida was still here. She's a lovely lady. We'll tell you about her later. So we were the new hope, the bright hope. The Cavern Club had realised that they'd lost some great gems with Brian taking everyone to London. So they thought, we'll create an agency, the Cavern Club agency. We were the first signing with the Clayton Squares, who were like a blues band. We were a blues band as well. And then we started getting popular, and obviously lots of the Cavern was getting a reputation through the Beatles, and we used to get lots of tourists coming in. So eventually we had a fan club in Florida, fan club in LA, Rodeo Drive, darling, and we had all over Germany and Sweden. But we didn't take advantage merchandise. I should have been pumping out T-shirts, but we didn't at the time. But we had a great time, and we were on the agency, so we'd end up playing every little drop-off. If a band didn't make it from London, we'd dep. If another band couldn't make it from Warwick, we'd dep. So we ended up, we've got the world record of playing the Cavern Club over, I've lost count, I think it must be about 800, 900 times. Wow. Both the old and the new.
And the Beatles were lightweights, only played their nearly 300.
Yeah, Wimps, they went to London then, didn't they?
Yeah. So what was it like in Liverpool after that initial gold rush when, you weren't signed to a record label, were you? You must have been hoping to be.
Everyone was, every band.
But the A&R men in London had been up here, they grabbed the talent as
they moved to Manchester.
Right.
Then they went to Scotland.
Yeah.
And I kept phoning them up, and they said, well, we might come back to Liverpool, but they didn't.
Yeah, but it's a British thing, isn't it, that they kind of turned against Liverpool. They didn't think, well, there must be more talent there. They just thought, we've done that. We'll now look somewhere else.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talented acts here, like the Hideaways, who didn't get the break that you should have done.
The one I loved was a guy called Rory Storm, the Hurricanes. They were perfect cinematic fodder. And if you do your research, he was an amazing singer and a really good-looking dude, and sadly had a sad ending. But lots of talent here.
Yeah, Rory was that first generation, and they just somehow didn't want to know about him, did they?
I know, it's weird. I mean, he was a character. If you Google him, you see this really good-looking dude. He should have been an actor. But, he was great to watch.
He had a stutter.
Yeah, and Freddie Starr, who was a comedian over here, Freddie Starr and the Midnighters, he also stuttered. And when the two of them came together to do just jump up and have a sing-song with Rory, Freddie would be going, "Rrr, rrr, 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 rrr," half an hour of that, and Rory would answer back, "Rrr, rrr, rrr, rrr." So it's the funniest thing ever. Eventually, they did get a song together. There you go. Bit of trivia.
You couldn't do that anymore.
No.
In today's world. You played the harmonica, is that right?
Yeah, it's the cheapest instrument I could find, and I could put it in the pocket and walk around, you know. I always felt sorry for the drummers and the organ players, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the harmonica.
But the most famous bit of the Hideaway's career, at least visually, is when you did the TV commercial for Timex watches.
Yeah.
Ticka Timex.
Oh, that was great. That, I mean, Frida remember all those days. The Cavern became then the new trendy place. You know, 60s, everyone was coming here, and then Rank Organisation and Timex Watches decided to do an advert, and we were cast as the band. And I must admit, I looked rather cute then, you know, sort of old now, but then I looked okay. So we all had to wear a watch. And, playing guitar. And it was in black and white, and it was Timex at the Cavern Club. And it ended up that day was like, we were workaholics. So in the morning, we filmed the Timex ad. And then at lunchtime, we'd done a lunchtime session for the kids. Then we went off. We'd done an early evening slot at the Cavern. Then we had to go to the Spot Club or some other club. And then eventually we came back and done the all-nighter. So we ended up playing 4 times at the Cavern. And I was knackered after the end of that. Shattered.
Were you well paid for that?
No, we'd done it for love. Like hell, yeah.
Did you get a free watch?
The watch broke the next day. But it did, it's true. Bob Waller and Ray McFall must have got thousands for it, you know, for the ad. And the fella comes over and says, "Here's a watch for you. Here's a watch for you, a watch for you." Anyway, I go off, and the next day I don't know what happened. I looked at it, it wasn't working, but they'd gone by then, so I couldn't give it back to them. So yes, yeah, default.
Yeah, the other particularly synonymous moment of you in the Cavern is, had to look this date up, February the 28th, 1966. Ray McFall, the owner, through all those years, had gone bankrupt, and the Cavern was closing. Ooh. Tell me what happened on that final day, because you were involved, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, it was sad. The Cavern, you know, it's a historic building, and we decided, along with Billy Butler and the bouncer, Paddy. Paddy was like 7 foot tall, massive man, a big burly man. So we all decided we'd get some of the fans there. We'd done a session there. We were about to close about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever. And then we got all the chairs, barricaded the doors because we knew the bailiff was coming the next day to try and get in to repossess. So we stayed there all night, and we were playing away. Paddy painted his face in black, gloss paint, why I don't know, to do some Al Johnson songs.
He used to do a minstrel act.
Honestly, he was a character. And Billy Butler, you know, he tried to sing, but we kept pulling him off. He had a terrible voice. But, and we done that. And then eventually the police came in. We all got told off. And then it happened a couple of times. And then, who was the minister? Bessie Braddock. Bessie Braddock. If you Google Bessie Braddock and Winston Churchill, you'll see a funny little piece there. There's a famous little quote. But Bessie was our local sort of MP. Yeah. And she tried to help us reopen the Cavern. And I remember her driving along. She was like about 4'6", but massive. And she had a car, and her little feet didn't touch the pedals. So she had planks of wood there. And I'm getting worried sitting next to her. And not only that, she's got a hand mic there with the speaker on the top of the car going, "This is Bessie Braddock, vote Labour, vote Labour." And you do the canvassing while I'm talking to her. "Excuse me, love," I said, "state of us." Anyway, there you go, a bit of trivia.
Character. If you're barricading yourself inside the Cavern,
yeah,
what were you going to do for food and sustenance after a day or two?
Well, there were
thought it through?
No, we hadn't thought it through. We ate all the hot dogs. There were a couple of mice going through. They were grilled. No, we took some provisions. There were some provisions there. Paddy, I think, had, I don't know how many bottles of whiskey, but yeah, we were sorted. It was fun. But it was exciting. But it was the club that we wanted to keep. Part of history. And it's like, you know, you can imagine it, Windsor Castle being taken down. and then being, anyway, it's a part of history.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah. It's a Liverpool thing that you would close such a valued venue, but it did reopen again soon after.
Yeah, it did, yes, and rightly so.
Yeah, yeah. Is it true that the Hideaways did the Beatles song "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away" as "You've Got to Love Your Hideaway"?
I told McCartney this, and he said, "Am I getting paid copyright?" I said, "Yeah, don't worry. You're not out of pocket." Yeah, we did. Was it Ozzy? I think it was Ozzy. We had a Chinese guitarist, Ozzy. Fantastic, and we got lots of coverage on that. And he was the one that changed it along with Frank O'Connor, who we call Fab O'Connor, a very good-looking guy and all that bit. But anyway, yes, so we did, and I played the harmonica on there. I remember Macca. I see Macca. I think Frida sees him as well. But we often bump into each other, and there are a couple of stories about Paul that we may talk about later. But and I said, we changed the lyrics. He said, well, as long as you're getting paid my little, I'm happy. Yeah. Carry on. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Is there a recording of that?
No, I don't think there is.
You've got to love your hideaway?
Yeah, no.
Which hideaway was it was going to be loved?
I loved them all. Yeah. Right. They got worried at one point, but I loved them all. Them all.
Yeah. I saw in one of the weekly music papers of those days, Judd Lander's left the Hideaways to become a pirate radio DJ.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it was in 1966.
Was I a DJ?
Well, I don't know.
Hi there. Are you listening, you little lovers? Are you listening? No.
So it never happened then?
No, it never happened. No,
right.
no.
Right. No, that must have been around the time that you left Liverpool and started to go to London. Why did you do that?
Well, it was down to a band called the Mersey Beats. They were now going to London. All the bands were going to London to record because of the big studios there. So the Mersey Beats asked me, or the Merseys they were called then, asked me to play on a record of theirs called Penny in My Pocket. So I went up. It was recorded at Decca in Hyde Park. So I started going up there with the bands, and we'd travel up. And I seemed to get lucky with session work, people asking for me to play. Yeah. And I almost got a session with the Beatles, Neil. We were talking, because Neil Aspinall was the Beatles' main man. He's a lovely guy, and took so much care of that band. He was so protective, really cool. Yeah. But anyway, he said, we should get you on harmonica, because he played harmonica on a few of their records in the past. So I said, yeah, I'll have a bit of that, but it never happened. So I started going to London and started getting a bit of a reputation as a harmonica player. Well, I've always been full of wind, so it's the perfect instrument, isn't it? So there you go.
What Beatles track did you nearly play on then?
Which one? The Beatles?
Yeah.
Well, they were in Abbey Road. I'm not quite sure which one it was, but I would have played on any. I would have done it for nothing. Yeah but it didn't happen.
Right. Okay. How did your friendship with Neil Aspinall begin, and what kind of times did you have together?
Down to the Pete Best, really, and Bill, a friend of mine, Bill Marchant. Bill was the manager of a cinema, and Bill used to go to school with Neil. And we ended up, sort of going with Neil, having a drink at the Blue Angel Club, or hanging around together. And by this time, Neil then moved to London. And the Beatles had given him a grace and favour flat in Knightsbridge, in a place called 40 House in Sloane Street, which is the poshest place in London. And then he said, well, you can stay with us if you're coming up. So both myself and Bill stayed with Neil, and we overstayed the welcome. And I always remember going in the bedroom, now Knightsbridge, very nice, the flat, fantastic. I remember phoning my mum up and saying, we could fit our house in my bedroom. It's massive. Couldn't believe it. And the first day, I always remember the first day, they had a concierge on the door, a fellow with a bumblebee jacket. Good morning, sir, can I help you? I said, yeah. He said, where are you off to? I said, a bit of business, my friend, bit of business. And I went to Victoria Dole office to sign on the dole, which is, to get money. I don't know, the US people, you get from the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I came back and he said, how's your day, sir? Very well, thank you very much. Yeah, and I went upstairs. I got away with it. But in Neil's place, don't forget, you get George Harrison would come around. I remember sitting on the couch, reading a paper, and I think I had a bit of wacky-backy. I didn't do drugs, really. But I'm reading a paper, and then suddenly I heard a sitar play, and I load the paper, and there was George Harrison in front of me, and brought the paper back up. And I'm just thinking behind the paper, I can't believe this. George Harrison in front. And he just sneaked in to get something from Neil and picked up the bits and pieces. It was a mad place. I'm cleaning up Neil's flat, picking up bits of paper, throwing them away. And John had been in, George had been in, scribbling away. They were probably lyrics. What a fool I was.
Yeah.
Trying to be nice. Don't be nice. Don't be nice.
Don't be a
so
good
getting
house
back
guest.
to the Casbah.
Yeah.
So Pete Best, I was putting this on me nose, sorry about that. Yeah, so there was Mo, Pete Best and Rory, and by this time the band had left. They're in
Rory
London.
Best you're talking about, not
Rory
Storm.
Best.
Rory
Yeah.
Best, yeah.
So the family were there, and they used to have parties all the time. So Neil would call me up and Bill and say, we're going to Mo's for a party, and we go to the party, be chatting with Pete, and I always felt really sorry for Pete, and he had such a great relationship, with everybody, and I just felt so for him. But he was such a brave, put the face on, just carried on with life, but Mo, now that was a different story. She said, there are 5, then there'll be 4. Then there'll be 3. When she'd had a few gin and tonics, she could be quite feisty. She was a small Indian lady. And but all the parties, we had a wild time, but the relationship with Neil and Pete, and of course all the boys knew that Neil was seeing Pete because he ended up having a child to Mo, and Rogue was born.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary thing that right through the 60s, the Beatles' right-hand man, their most faithful employee, was a close friend of the Bests and living with them still, coming back home to Liverpool at the weekends and being in the Best house.
Yeah, and McCartney was very, 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 very close with Neil. And you could see it, the weirdest thing that ever happened. And it is part of, music history, but it turned out to be great in the end, because I remember Neil telling me that they were going to do the oratorio, they would do the big roundup of all the Beatles' history and everything. And then he...
The anthology.
Yeah, the anthology. And then what he did, he said to the guys, because he used to speak to Paul, obviously Yoko and everyone else, and he turned around and suggested that, Pete should be part of that history, because he was. And eventually it was through Neil that became to fruition. And as a consequence, Pete, by default, ended up getting millions at the end. So God was looking down at him.
Did you hear how much it was, actually?
Well, he still owes me 10 quid, so I can't think it's that much.
Can't be that good,
No,
can it?
a lot of money. I don't know. I don't know the amount, but it's just based on sales,
Yeah. It was good that he got some payouts.
No, it's sweet, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting that he was also trying to get a payout in the 60s as well.
Sorry?
He was suing them. He sued them in America for $8 million, Pete did. But I don't think he got
no.
more than a fraction of that.
It's very difficult. And I mean, you've got Ringo as well. Ringo's a good drummer. I've just been working with his son, Zach.
Have you? What have you been doing with Zach?
Oh, he's bonkers. Oh, no, he's nice. A nice bonkers. But, Zach's also a drummer. He played with The Who.
Extraordinary drummer.
He called me up and he said, I've just been zacked. And then he got reinstated. Then he got sacked. And all in the space of a week. But anyway, he's lovely. They're all fun.
What were you doing with him recently?
Well, I do a bit of PR. I've got an agency now, and it's like an extension of a job I had with Charisma Records, and where I've done it with Apple. In the end, I got hired by a lady at Apple to plug the rock and roll album for John, Ringo, and that. It's a weird, my relationship with all that. I was on the fringe all the time, but it's fun.
So you've gone from Liverpool, we're playing in the Cavern. I didn't even ask you. Did you see the Beatles in the Cavern?
The irony, no. I stayed out all night at the Empire to get tickets with Frank O'Connor, and I didn't get the tickets in the end. Right. So I never ever saw the Beatles live.
That's extraordinary.
I know, weird. Me?
Yeah.
Not seeing them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they said often, why didn't you come and see it? No, they didn't. Pulled your leg.
We were looking for you, but you weren't there, they said.
Yeah. So I'm in London now. It was with that, actually, it's true. With the Apple, at Apple Records, I lived with a guy called George Peckham. I'd left Neil's at this time, and I got a flat with a guy called George Peckham, who was a record cutter in the basement of Savile Row. And George would cut the grooves on the vinyls, and he'd write on the middle, a Porky Prime cut, because he was a big boy. And so he'd write that. And I used to pop up there all the time, and would go down the basement and speak to him. And Neil would be upstairs, and I had a chat with Neil one day. And Neil said, "Are you going up to Liverpool at all?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going up with the switchboard operator, Laurie." He said, "Look," he said, "you couldn't do me a favour." He said, "We're wrapping up Apple, and we're wrapping up the fan club." And I said, yeah, no problem. I was going to get a train up, no problem. He said, "Look," he said, "we've got a cheque for the fan club for Frida. Will you take the cheque up?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." And he and John had countersigned it, and it's a cheque for £100. Now, this is back in 60. When was it, Frida? 72. So I'm then thinking, great, yeah. And then Neil turned around and said, "You can use John's car to go up there, the limo." I was so rude not to. Oh, I love that idea. And he had the big white Mercedes Pullman with blacked out windows. So me and Laurie get in the car, and who was the driver? Alf was the driver. So we're driving up the motorway, and I stopped at every service station just to get out to look cool and go to the toilet. And then Laurie started doing it, and Alf on the thought said, "Stop bloody doing that, I want to get to the pool." So we eventually got to Liverpool. And the car wouldn't fit round where I lived. I lived in a little, council estate, and the car couldn't get round there. So we ended up going to Frida's office. And he had the roof there and a microphone. John used to sing in the car in the back, all blacked out windows. So I opened the roof, and I'm out like Lord Muck, standing out. And I've got the speaker, and I'm shouting at the speaker, "Frida Kelly, this is your life." And Frida was in the office with everyone, and then I just done this graceful thing. And then we had to clear all the stuff out and put it in the boot of the car. And it was just mad. And then Frida took us out to dinner to a place called the La Bussola, which was like the Ritz of Liverpool. And we had a great time, didn't we, Frida? Yeah. So we never done that again. That was it. Yeah, so a bit of trivia.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the end of an era, really, isn't it? Closing the Beatles fan club, which happened after the group had broken up.
It's the thing that's true. Things were being thrown away that would be of great value. You're thinking of me in the flat with Neil and, George Harrison writing lyrics, and I'm going, yeah, that goes in a bit. I'll clear that for you, Neil. Yeah, like an idiot. And the same with Frida. We had loads of stuff. The one thing I'm proud of, I'm the #1 Beatles fan in the fan club. Correct? No. #2. Okay.
Did you pay your dues?
I'll tell you the truth. No. Well, what did you give me then? Okay, I'll speak to you later about that. Anyway, we had a fab time.
You're sacked.
And we're still in touch with Frida. He's one of our best mates.
Yeah. So you were in around, you're staying with Neil, and you're seeing the Beatles.
Yeah.
Did you go into Apple very much? Were you there when they played on the roof?
Yes, I was actually.
You were actually up on the roof?
Yeah, well, listen, there's a true story. I get on the roof, and I've been trying to find myself for 20 years on the roof. I was so discreetly placed that you can't find me. It was Mal Evans. I went down to see George. It was raining. I always remember it was a grey day. Neil had gone. He said something was happening on the roof. Mal was taking care of it, and he said that he was going to get his tonsils done. He was going to hospital. So I go down to see George in the basement, the cutter, and we're there, and I could see everything going on. George Martin was there, everyone. And then Mal came over and gave me a couple of towels. And he said, "Judd, help us with this." And I walked upstairs. It was to dampen Ringo's bass drum.
Right.
So I'm up there, and we met up there, didn't we, eventually? The interview, wasn't there an interview?
No, I wasn't there.
No.
But you did go back about 5 years ago, didn't you, and do it?
Yeah, to do a bit of a documentary. But yeah, so I was up there for, I think it was about 6 numbers, and then that was it. The police started coming, and then off we went.
So where should we look for you? I know you can't see yourself.
Look, it's behind, it's true. I was with Laurie and a couple of the switchboard operators. Behind, as you're coming out, you see the policeman coming out the exit.
Yeah.
I'm round there. I've got long hair. I had dark shades on. And I looked like a hunk of burning love. But the cameras didn't find me, but I'm there. I enjoyed it there. It was great. But you can imagine the buzz. And, yeah, it was fantastic.
What do you think when you watched like the Peter Jackson Get Back film, and we've had the opportunity, more than even in the Let It Be film, to see how brilliant that rooftop performance
fantastic.
was.
And I went to the premiere in London. It was fantastic. I mean, a friend of mine, Martin, was involved with the whole production, and they do the sticklers for getting it right, so... Yeah, just an amazing, well, it's part of history. And the great thing about it is watching Paul, because, okay, I was never a fan, I'm sorry, of Yoko, because of the ethic that we had as a band. When you're in rehearsing or in a studio, it's the band and the producer. Eventually, when Yoko came, I remember Neil saying John was going out with this lady, blah, 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 and she started turning up in the studio. The frustration it must have been for McCartney and everyone else to try and get something done with somebody permanently there, not really contributing, and that is just my personal opinion. And then John was going through his thing and he was in love. I can understand all that. But, McCartney, I think, done so much to keep that whole thing together. He deserves a medal for all that.
Yeah. Yeah,
oh,
it obviously did change the dynamic of things if you've got another person in the room that isn't invited by only, more than one person.
Well, I think that comes across in the actual footage where, I always look, when I see Chuck Berry and John Lennon singing away and the camera pans and sees Yoko playing a tambourine out of chime, that does me head in. Well, that's a personal thing. Anyway, yeah. I shouldn't talk ill.
So tell me a little bit more about promoting the albums Goodnight Vienna for Ringo and Rock and Roll for John. Did they know you were doing this?
Oh, it's Snookeroo. Ringo I met in the pub round the corner from Savile Row. John had actually gone to the US by then. Yeah. I'd met John once in Apple. That was with Neil. But he was now in the States and couldn't get out, because of the issues there. So I set up a couple of interviews with Alan Freeman from the BBC to John. And I was in the studio, and there'd be a little chat. And then Fluff would tell Alan Freeman, turn around, "Oh, got Judd with me." And he had the boom down the... "All right, Judd, how are you?" Down the line. So we never really got that close. It was just like, by the by.
Yeah.
And it's the rock and roll album I worked on with him. We'd done the Old Grey Whistle test with that one. George was very distant, so I was promoting the record without the artist. And Ringo, we just promoted Snookeroo. And Mike was with him then, a friend of mine who was in the band with us. He then ended up working with Ringo at Tittenhurst Park as a helper and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. Mike O'Donnell.
Mike O'Donnell, yeah. He was in our band, the Matchbox, it's called.
Oh,
and then the other, I've got to tell you this story. There was a band called Badfinger, and Joey was a dear friend, as were all the other guys. And that was such a criminal thing where they were working well, they had hits, success, everything else, and a shyster, American supposed lawyer, shafted them by taking all their money under the pretext that he was saving them. He paid them a small amount per month, but he was going to put all this money offshore so it would accrue for them. Sadly, it never happened. And, I remember meeting the guys when they were on the rock bottom, and they had a track called Without You that Harry Nilsson, Mariah Carey had performed, making millions for this shyster, when Joey and everyone were walking around with holes in the shoes. And I even offered to put a couple of the guys up when I was living in London. But the record industry, can have its downsides. And there's a book called is it Without You?
Yeah, Without You.
You should honestly read it, and it'll show you the sad side of the business. And they were lovely, lovely guys.
Yeah. They had their hits, but they just didn't. Without You, to write Without You, and both of the songwriters of Without You committed suicide.
They committed suicide, yes.
Because of the problems they were going through.
Yeah, they committed suicide and left a note to the guy who ripped them off. It's a sad, sad story, but do check it out.
Yeah.
It'll waken you up to the business.
Yeah. So you were in the business in London.
Yep, so I got involved with Apple. Apple got me started, Neil, in a way. I'm to pat on his back. That got me into it, and a couple of the bands sent me to London. Then I joined a record company called Charisma Records. And, oh, a little ripple there. Well, that was fantastic.
Smith daughters.
Tony Stratton Smith. Charisma Records was a small label, but they had Genesis, Lindisfarne. They had some amazing bands. And I was naughty. I used to pop in there and sell a bit of contraband, which was borrowed from Selfridges. They were little cases, and this fella said, "Do you want to sell some cases?" And I used to go around to Charisma at the receptionist and say, "I've got a couple of cases here, any interest?" And the lady, one of the managers in there, thought, "Cheeky chappy, have you ever promoted a record?" And I said, "Well, no, what do you do?" She said, "You go to the BBC, you go in, and you get the DJ to play it." I said, "Oh, I can do that." So I ended up getting a job at Charisma, working with Genesis and some amazing bands. And I saw Peter Gabriel on a plane where I was flying off to Italy. And he is such a lovely guy. But so that got me on the roll there. So I'm now going up to the radio saying, John Peel, who was another Liverpool chap who was a DJ there, having a chat with him. And "Can you play this record for me?" I said, it's 8 minutes long. "No, Judd, I like that one. I'll put it on." And I got away with murder there. You know, I do silly stunts, pulling myself up. There was a playlist meeting where the Radio 1 would make a decision on what records they were going to play at the BBC that week. And I paid a fella doing the windows a few bob. And I pulled myself up on this little thing to the window where all the producers in those days smoked. The windows were open. And I'm throwing the records in saying, "This is great, this should be on the playlist." And then the records come flying out, hitting me left, right, and centre. But I did get it on. Yeah, the closest thing to heaven, and a couple of Genesis records.
What about brushes with the ex-Beatles in London? Did you see any of them?
Well, all the boys are gone now. Ringo's at Tittenhurst Park. Apple had sort of rolled down. But by default, I then joined CBS Records in Soho Square. And opposite Soho Square was Paul's office,
Yeah.
MPL.
Yeah.
And Alan, his manager at the time, or his boss, office boss, I used to have a little drink with him. And he said, "Oh, pop in one day." And I popped in. And Paul and Linda were there. And Linda would say, "Oh, have you got a ciggy?" And she'd bum a cigarette off me, and we'd chat away. And eventually, I started working with Michael Jackson. Now, that was a bit of a strange story, that one, but we got on well. And so Michael then had just been signed by Epic as a solo artist. And I was then in charge of the promotion department, so I'd meet him at the airport, I'd stick him in a limo, off we go, off we drive. So anyway, there was one occasion where I drove past the Palace. We were late to do a TV show on the South Bank. So rushing away, I'm in the car. As we're passing the Palace, I looked up and I could see the flag was up. I said, "Oh, the Queen's in." And then Michael looked at me and said, "Judd, can we go and have a cup of tea with the Queen?" I said, "Michael, it doesn't work like that. You have to, have an official." "Oh, come on, Judd." Anyway, we'd done the TV show. Every time he came into London to do any promo, I'd have to go past the Palace, and he'd go, "Oh, she's not in today, Judd." Anyway, but eventually, I was doing a big TV. He was impressed with all the guards, everyone all marching up and down. And eventually, I'd done an interview with Michael at Capital Radio, which is in Euston at the time. And we were early, and there were thousands of kids all waiting for him. I got the limo to sneak around the back. And we're waiting outside a militaire shop. There's a shop that sold old second-hand military stuff. And we're sitting there, and I had about 15 minutes to spare. And Michael's looking and said, "Judd, what?" I said, "They're the outfits that the army wore outside, and they sell them off. Oh, can we go in, Judd?" So anyway, he had a couple of security. We were just far enough away. We sneaked into the shop, and there was a little girl, her assistant. Her eyes just lit up, and she froze, and Michael froze. And I said, "Michael, say hello." He went, "Oh, hi, can I have a look around the shop?" She said, yeah. And she wanted to go and meet him over the road, but the boss wouldn't let her off work. Now anyway, he's a lovely guy, he'd done the autograph and everything, and he's now buying up the place. I'll have one of them, please. I'll have one of them. So I'm sticking them all in the boot of the car. And he loved the braid. So if you saw his big gigs on the stadiums, all that braid, don't blame it on him, blame it on the boogie. It was me. So anyway, but he was great to work with, and I introduced him to Macca.
How did you introduce him to Paul?
Well, it was Paul's manager at the time, because I'd mentioned it to him, and he said, well, why don't you pop over with him? And Michael was walking around CBS building, and somebody had said that Judd knows Paul and Linda. So and that's how it came about. He said, could I go and meet him and all that bit? And I phoned over, and ironically, Paul was downstairs with Linda. We went in. Linda was sweet. She was a real mumsy, gave him a little hug and all that bit, and had a great time. But little did I know that Michael would end up buying the bloody publishing, because then that put me out of par. Poor sod should own his own copyrights, but the way it went, bad. And I introduced Abba to them, which was a fun one, because, Paul was always open to meeting up with people. And he's great, he still jumps on the train coming down here occasionally without telling anyone. But there you go. Anything else to ask me?
I was just going to say...
all the secrets, I should keep this quiet.
Paul and Michael Jackson, because Paul and Michael Jackson recorded together, right?
Yeah.
And they had a working relationship for a couple of years. Is that all because of your introduction to them then?
Well, my smooth talking might have had a little part in it, but no, it would have happened eventually, Yeah. There were so many things. I mean, it was always funny because Alan Crowther was Paul's guy in command. I remember I helped with Bagpipes on a Mellotron once for Paul. He was doing a tour. And I was invited to the Hammersmith Odeon. So I'm a guest, and I'm waiting and watching the show, and it was for Campuchia, a big charity thing. And I'm there sitting on my side, and I see all these runners, bodyguards run along, and Alan, and he saw me in the audience. He said, come here, Judd. I came out, and this was in the middle of the set, and I'm chatting, and he said, Judd, have you got your bagpipes with you? I said, no, I don't carry him. He said, where do you live? I said, I live in Hampstead. He said, listen, we've got a car outside. Will you get them? I said, why? He said, the piper hasn't turned up. They were going to play Mulligan. So I said, well, okay. He actually zoomed me to Hammersmith, got me back, and I got there just in time where Paul started Mulligan. I've now got a kilt, and I had the kilt at home, so I looked right, and I'm walking over Pete Townsend, who's pissed on the floor with a bottle in his hand, and all these people, and I walked up to this little podium thing, and I'm sweat beading off me, and I'm looking out at the audience thinking, what the hell is all this about? And then Paul's doing his thing, and then he automatically turns around and looks up at me, and all I could see him was mouthing, what the are you doing? And then turned, and he carried on. That's true. There are so many silly stories like that.
And you did it?
Yeah.
Well, you haven't got a pair of bagpipes, unless you have got a pair of bagpipes.
I've got a pair of bagpipes, yeah.
Right, okay.
I ended up playing on his album. No, I'd done the double. Mike McGeer, Paul's brother, I played on a track called Liverpool Lou many years ago. And then Paul calls me up, and I go to the farm, and I play on one of his albums.
Right.
But he's hidden me there. I wanted a big solo.
Right.
But he was the boss, and he paid me, so I just
That will
went for it.
be this one.
No,
yeah?
that one.
That one. This one.
This one.
Okay.
That was the one, yeah.
Flowers in the Dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, good track. But we're gonna finish with you playing a harmonica piece, aren't we?
Oh, my claim to fame.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, no, this is weird, this one. Just quickly, I got a phone call. I was working at Motown Records. I do PR as well as session work, and they ended up playing, Meet Lionel Richie, and he ended up getting on the album or whatever, blagged me way on all their albums. And I get a phone call one day, and Boy George wanted me to go over and meet him. Now, I was a bit worried there. I thought, was this a blind date, or was it just business? So I ended up going along there, and then I ended up playing on a record, shall I?
Yeah.
See if it works. Listen, it's early morning. I've got a hangover from last night, so see if it works. Yeah, thank you. So the story here is, and I played on a Spice Girl, Say You'll Be There, loads of records. But the story is when I go, my daughter's here, and when I go into Tesco shopping and it starts playing on the radio, she said, ta-ting, ta-ting. So it helps with the pension. So have you had enough?
We've had enough. We've definitely had enough, yeah.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary life you've had. Thank you, Judd.
Thank you. Get the book when it comes out.
Are you writing it?
Yeah, well, I keep going back to it. I'll be dead by the time I finish it. But anyway, listen, have a good time. Don't get too drunk and enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, Judd Lander.
Hang on.
Ladies and gentlemen, the legend that is Judd Lander. Absolutely fantastic. So, Judd, I've just booked you in for a week next week, in conversation for a week. That's just part